I've got the most bullish Bitcoin chart you are ever going to see in this video for you to see. So if you are excited for that, do me a favor and smash up the likes. But before we get into that, I want to cover some of the shorter term analysis with you all in this YouTube video. We have seen a phenomenal fake out right here. Absolutely beautiful. Bouncing off that 382 retracement, coming down for that deviation, back up to resistance. Everything is popping off right now, ladies and gents. This is absolutely fantastic price action here. And there's a lot that I want to talk to you about, but I can't start this video without looking at the dollar. We have seen a massive fuck you god candle right here, stretching from low to high by 1.2% within a matter of hours on the dollar index, which is extremely out of character for the dollar. We don't actually typically see candles this strong this often, and it has taken us up into a critical area of resistance. We can actually take a look at that right here on this chart, very, very clearly showing that this is a macro area of resistance. We're not quite up to the area of resistance that I was looking for up in the 105, 106 range, but we are getting close to that, and that would be very interesting to see how the market reacts. And at the very same time, we've seen a little bit of a drop on the S&P 500, and of course, that has reflected with Bitcoin. Now, what I'm seeing with Bitcoin here is a chart that really wants to break out. We already had the first breakout here. We are now teasing this level. Before, when we were trying to get that breakout, we came back up for that test. It was a big rejection, and we're already right back up, right? So if we're looking for signs of strength, the market is giving it to us, right? For the dollar to move up this high, for the S&P 500 to pull back the way that it has, and for Bitcoin to do the very same thing, and now we're right back at the very same resistance level, to me, that is actually one of the strongest signs that this chart could have printed here, and it gets a little bit better than that as well. There's another chart that I want to show you right here on Bitcoin, just illustrating our phenomenal horizontal resistance that we're faced with right now, and just how easy it would be for this narrative to completely flip. All we would have to do is get a pump of, let's say, a couple $100, $1,000, whatever it takes, move up above this resistance level and come back down for that back test, and that's going to be it. 71,000 is suddenly going to be a lot more accessible. And if that happens so quickly after a fake out, then how fake was that fake out, right? Well, if you're looking at a fake out that instantly gets recovered back up over the next couple of days, it just seems like there was a little bit of extra liquidity that was a little bit trigger happy that wanted to sell off right there. But if we're already getting right back up to that level, then how in control of the market are the bears? Perhaps not very much, right? So that is all super, super cool. We're not even at the coolest part of this video yet, so I am super, super excited for that. Bear with me while I get there. And I've also got a super special guest that I want to show you guys in this YouTube video. If you like my channel, if you like me, more importantly, of course you do, you're going to love the person I'm about to show you in this video, so stick around for that as well. And if you have any guesses, because he is somebody I've interacted with recently on YouTube, I want you to drop that guess in the comment section now. Tell me his name. I'll be very curious to see how many of you guys have the intuition to guess who it actually is. Super, super cool. But let's continue on here with the analysis. I want to take a look at some of our key indicators to show us what has actually been going on. And the first thing that's really interesting is Bitcoin has perfectly bounced off that Ichimoku cloud. This is the indicator that is a little bit daunting at first sight, but of course, if you are curious about learning about it, you can punch this into the YouTube search bar and watch my full tutorial on how to get this indicator, how to use it, my best practices, so on and so forth. And we have bounced off beautifully off that green line right here, which has kind of sent us a little bit higher. And at the very same time, if we take a look at this from a perspective of momentum, we also have phenomenal daily EMA support here, which has continued to bolster this market higher. These are not easy to break, right? It's not easy for the market to collapse below support like this, especially on time frames like this. So it's definitely something that I think is worth keeping in mind. Before we continue on with the bullish narrative, is it still possible that we see a deeper pullback? Yes, 100%, because we still have very, very nice support a lot further down from our current price, and it would be absolutely beautiful to see Bitcoin continue to range sideways in this kind of range before continuing to move up. But I want to stop teasing you guys just for a minute, because this actually doesn't really matter for one very, very important reason. Now, if you guys have been subscribed to this channel, you're going to know that we've been talking a lot about what happened back in 2020. Bitcoin back in 2020 with this chart pulled off something absolutely phenomenal where it ended up moving back up to its previous all-time high, right? Obviously, we set that all-time high at 20K right here. We ended up moving right back up to that all-time high here in 2020. And we basically just kind of stabilized up here, right? Like we got into this range and then it was about 30 days of sideways chop until we were able to get that breakout up. And if we take a look at what that actually meant, we did have a situation here where we formed a bit of an ascending triangle that allowed the market to pump up, right? Absolutely beautiful stuff here off that $20,000 price level. And if you have been paying attention to what we've been talking about on this channel, then you're actually going to know that Bitcoin is doing something similar right now. If we move back to the present day, not only do we have this existing symmetrical triangle that we've been talking about already, but we can also start looking at something a little bit more like this, where we can just kind of stretch out one of these boxes and we can imagine that this is our horizontal line right there. And let me just make this line nice and thick so we can see it. Let me bring that opacity up. And you can see very clearly we have, it's not that clear actually. Let me bring this on another chart. We do have another very interesting kind of ascending triangle starting to show up in this market now. And again, it's happening in the exact same way, but this one is actually better. And the reason it's better is because the last time we were up there, we actually only traded in the 20K range. We only traded there for about 30 days. This time, from the moment we entered this range right up until the present day, we are already up at 42 days. That means we've spent a longer period of time consolidating at this very same area of resistance compared to last time. I am not worried about the fact that Bitcoin has already broken the all-time high, multiple times, obviously. The previous all-time high was just kind of floating around here at about $69,000. The fact that we've already come above it doesn't matter to me. This is still the exact same setup that we saw before. And the similarities are striking. If we take a look at the support that we've got here, we've got 1, 2, 3 hits right here, 1, 2, 3 hits right here. Back here, we've got the 2020 chart. Over here, we've got the present day chart. We've got 3 hits on the support, 2 key hits on the resistance. Obviously, we had a bonus hit right before this pattern even started, just to reaffirm that we are continuing to look at a phenomenal setup in this market for the exact same thing to happen. And all of this to me points to the fact that if Bitcoin is able to, that if Bitcoin is able to get the breakout above these key levels, if we're able to get a flush, clean breakout with good closes, maybe a daily close, maybe a weekly close, it's going to depend on you and your own risk appetite, how conservative or aggressive you are in terms of what you're looking for. But if we're able to get that confirmed breakout, the move will be astronomical from what I'm seeing on this chart. And the reason I'm saying that is because if we take a look at what happened to Bitcoin back in 2020, and this is where stuff gets really exciting because we're starting to see some very, very juicy trading opportunities in this market. Those of you that have been around are going to know that there are some phenomenal offers available to you all with the links in the description below. Bybit is literally going to give you a free $500 position. You can throw that any direction you like, long or short. Profits are yours to withdraw. If you lose the money, it doesn't matter. That is Bybit's loss. So go take their money, go make some money with it if that's your vibe. And if you don't like Bybit for whatever reason, if you don't want to use it, you've got some phenomenal no KYC alternatives linked down below as well, which you can take advantage of. And you are looking in total at some massive bonuses with the links in the description. So we'll come back to them in just a little bit, but just take note that if you are signed up to any of these, to get your bonuses, a lot of the time you are going to have to at least start trading. There are exceptions to that. For example, some exchanges are going to be a little bit different with different offers, but check them all out. You are getting a lot of free money, and it is all capital that you can throw back into the market and generate more profits with. But let's talk about how we can actually relate that to the real world now, because what we saw back here with our $20,000 price level was a phenomenal breakout just immediately within that. This is the daily chart, by the way. This is huge. Within the next 2 days after that breakout, we were already looking at a 22% pump, and that was just to the next consolidation point. If we look at where this move actually ended up stopping from the breakout point to the high, which only took 3 weeks, the price more than doubled. I would want to show you what that's going to look like for present day, but the numbers are just going to get too ridiculous. But fuck it, while we're here, and because you've already smashed up those likes, we're going to do that anyway. If we look at the same move happening on this chart right now, I can't even fit this on the chart. That's how crazy this is getting. We are looking at, if it's 114% pump, a $154,000 Bitcoin. This is obviously not the kind of content that I usually put out here, but the move that we have here is undeniable. We've already seen this play out in 2020, and we've got the exact same setup, right? I'm not the kind of person, you guys already know this, that's why you watch me. I'm not the kind of person that's here banging on drums talking about a $500,000 Bitcoin just for fun because I'm a gambler or whatever, or I'm super, super desperate in this market. That's obviously not why you come to this channel. And at the very same time, even if we don't pull off the same move, let's say if it's just half of that move, right? 114%, what's half of that? Let's say it's like 55%. Even if we just pull off a 55% move, we're still looking at a Bitcoin above $110,000, right? I mean, it gets very crazy. It gets quite hard to keep track of. And it also means that no matter what happens, we're looking at some very exciting price targets. Here's another look at the very same thing, where if we've got this exact same ascending triangle that we've been talking about over the last few minutes, we do have a potential 16% speculative target that we can extrapolate. The height of the pennant is about 16%. We can extrapolate the target from that, taking us up by about 16% again, up to the $83,000 target. So even if you're very conservative, right, and you're only looking at the lowest minimum pump that this could produce in terms of the height of the pennant, and then grabbing a target from that, you're still looking at a high which from current prices is about $14,000 above where we are right now. That's if you're conservative, just according to what we're getting here, right? Even if you're more conservative than that, we're at the minimum looking at a breakout above this all-time high. And if you are conservative like me, then you're also going to understand that the more of a consolidation, more of a correction, more of a time-based correction that we have in the market, the bigger the pops usually happen, right? I think this is something that a lot of people really get caught up on. They trip over in the crypto community. Obviously, we're not messing that up. That's why we're here. A lot of people fail to understand that if you take this more conservative approach of applauding, celebrating these kind of 7-month consolidation periods that Bitcoin printed back here toward, what was this, like literally the entire middle of 2023 for 7 entire months. If you actually like these kind of bits of price action, well then the next moves that come afterwards, right, the astronomical rises from there, these can't surprise you, right? The only way you can produce a move like this is if you've had a correction like this and a bear market like this, right? We are only seeing reaction rallies to the things that have happened in the past. And so this is actually one of the most bullish things that we could be seeing in the market. And that to me absolutely fires me up. Now, it gets even better. Of course it gets better. If we take a look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, we're still continuing to hold sideways up here, which is absolutely phenomenal because this is the very top of the range, which is also the very top of another range. And we are looking at a potential rise up to the next key zone of this Bitcoin dominance chart up at about the 60% range. I think we can get there. I still think we can get there. And that would probably mean a lot more blood for the altcoin market, or at the very least, it would mean that Bitcoin moves up by a lot and altcoins move up by a little bit, but the end result is still the same. Bitcoin gains superiority and dominance in this market. Let's take a quick look at Ethereum to see what Ethereum is saying about all of this stuff, because we have been seeing some weakness on Ethereum. I'm actually going to start with the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. One of the key things I was looking at with you guys is falling below this orange box. I want to refresh those of you that maybe haven't had a chance to see that content, but Ethereum has been really falling and struggling against Bitcoin over this last little bit. I mean, this downtrend has existed for quite some time now, about 588 days from this point, but really we haven't been trending up from this point here, which takes us up to 1,064 days. And if I was good at math, I would tell you that that looks around like 3 years or something ridiculous, or 2.5 years. So very, very long period of time that Ethereum has not been gaining strength against Bitcoin. And to add insult to injury, we now have a situation where we've fallen below this critical area of support, and we are now back testing it, continuing to find resistance. So this is definitely the worst chart I can think of in terms of crypto right now. It strongly implies more downside. I don't know if that's actually going to come. The special guest that I'm going to show you guys in just a minute has actually highlighted a very, very cool, falling wedge pattern that I think we might be able to talk about a little bit later on in this video as well. So there are silver linings. There always are. That's why these markets function. That's why people trade them. But from the way I'm seeing things, and I do like to keep it very simple, just with basic lines, we do have a critical area of support which we've developed very clearly over the last year, stretching all the way back to 2017, and we're now in 2024. So that was 7 years ago. What an old area of resistance, ladies and gents. Absolutely crazy. This area of resistance, this area in the market became relevant more than 7 years ago, because we're now in April and we first tested it in March of 2017. We are now just consolidating in it. And again, you know, it all comes down to, you can understand the psychology of the market very clearly by looking at super basic things. These are things that most people won't tell you simply because they don't know. But of course, we're very well aware of these facts, where if you get these nice big moves off our support levels, that gives you a lot of confidence that this support level is legitimate and it's going to be able to support the price action. We're going to be able to get some nice bounces off it. However, if you come back down to the same area of support and you cannot produce a bounce, if you cannot produce a bounce which stretches up by 73% within 3 months, and instead, if we look, you know, even longer than that, you know, and you're not really even moving up. In fact, you're moving down, or at the very, very best, you're only producing a 20% pump. That is telling you very clearly that previously when we fell down to this area, we had good support. This time, we cannot make use of this support. This is a sign of a chart that is about to roll over and die. Does that mean it's actually going to happen? Not necessarily. Of course, nothing is guaranteed in this market, but all we have are the numbers and lines that are in front of us. And to me, this looks like a very clear image of weakness against Bitcoin, and it definitely backs up that Bitcoin dominance chart. So I would be expecting Ethereum to continue to get weaker against Bitcoin. Does that mean this is a bad buy zone for Ethereum? No, I don't think so. I actually think this is the best buy zone for Ethereum that we've had in the last 1,000 days. I don't care about Ethereum against the dollar because the only thing I want is more BTC. And if Ethereum is down against Bitcoin, that makes this a good buy level in my opinion. I am personally not buying yet. I feel like I should, but I feel like we might get better entries a little bit lower. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I am convincing myself to buy a little bit of Ethereum down at this level, because even though we have a very bearish chart from everything I've just said, I can't deny how cheap this Ethereum is against Bitcoin. And especially when we start looking at the upside here, we have got a lot of upside, right? Like if Ethereum does end up moving back up just to the range highs that we've had here, that's 50% more Bitcoin. If I put one Bitcoin in over here, I'm closing with 1.5 BTC. That's an extra $30,000, $35,000 at Bitcoin's current price. The gains are not small. I mean, the risk to reward is starting to look really good to me. So I am definitely liking this chart. Let me make sure I've covered everything I wanted to in this video, but I think that is most of it. But there are some other very interesting bits. The mystery guest, I want you guys, if you've not already dropped your comment down below, to let me know who you think he might be, has a lot of very, very interesting insights. You're going to learn some super cool stuff over this next little bit. Make sure you do smash up those likes if you are excited. But Mr. Mystery Guest, can we ask you to jump in the frame? What's your name, bro?
Dude, thank you so much for the intro. It's an absolute honor to be on your channel because, I mean, when I was growing up in crypto and really growing up at the same time, I was watching your channel. So thank you so much for having me on. I've learned so much from you, and as I said, it's an honor.
Thank you very much, man.
No
Where
worries.
can people find you? Who are you?
So I'm Crypto Kid, and if you type Crypto Kid on Twitter, YouTube, you should find me. So
yeah, so I'm just going to type that in for you guys so you can see that. Crypto Kid. His name is FA. Absolute legend. Bro, you've heard a little bit of my videos so far. Why don't you take the reins and tell me what you think about this?
So I actually like your comparison with 2020 a lot. I think the fact that Bitcoin is forming an ascending triangle similar to what happened in 2020 is incredibly bullish. And now, I mean, you hear this a lot in the market. This time is different. Is it actually different to previous cycles? I think so, because in no other cycle for Bitcoin, we had the level of institutional adoption that we have. So there is clear buying pressure from ETFs in the United States every single day. And now that Bitcoin is going to have the fourth halving in approximately 7 to 8 days, Bitcoin will actually become the hardest asset in the world. So if we compare it to gold, gold has an yearly inflation into its supply of approximately 2.2%. Now Bitcoin is going to have an inflation of only 0.85%, making it the hardest asset in the world to actually obtain. And now that the CFTC, or actually the SEC in the United States, they've declared Bitcoin a commodity, technically it's become an official inflationary hedge. And if you compare the price of Bitcoin to the price of gold to the index of 2-year expected inflation, you can see that they're all significantly correlated. So I think Bitcoin has achieved its goal of multiple years of becoming a hedge against inflation. And I think from now on onwards, Bitcoin will just keep on going higher, higher, and higher. But if you want me to look at the immediate short term, I think that there's one particular fundamental event happening within this month, apart from the halving, that could drive the price of Bitcoin above all-time highs once again. And that's the approval of Hong Kong ETFs. Now, we've not unlocked capital in Asia yet. So we've unlocked European capital, we have European ETFs, we have American ETFs, but Asian investors, they're not able to purchase American Bitcoin spot ETFs. And if we have these Hong Kong approvals, which are expected to happen this month, according to Bloomberg, then we're unlocking new hundreds of billions of dollars worth of capital in a market where Chinese investors in particular, they are exiting local companies and local stocks and putting it heavily into markets in the US and markets in the EU. For example, there was a new gold ETF that Asian investors were able to purchase, and this gold ETF had a 30% premium in just a matter of days. So I think in a market where Chinese investors are fleeing from their own market and putting it into different markets, I think that if we do have these Hong Kong ETFs, we will see significant inflows, potentially higher than the ones in the United States. So I think that can drive the price up very high. Do keep in mind, we've had so much China FUD in the past for Bitcoin. At the last minute, they may not get approved. That is a possibility. But even then, I think that historically speaking, one of the most profitable strategies to do with Bitcoin was to just buy and hold. So if you're buying Bitcoin now, if you're buying Bitcoin tomorrow, it doesn't make a difference unless it's under 100K. I think you're getting cheap Bitcoin because, just to summarize, Bitcoin stands for more than just a hedge against inflation, a currency depending on which part of the world you live in. It stands as a kind of stance to financial freedom and liberalism. So Bitcoin is an entire rebellion for liberty, and I think people have been screwed over by so many lies over the past hundreds of years. So I think when we get to a point where national debt is at all-time highs, it's increasing $1 trillion per 90 days or per 100 days. I think in 2025, when we go to a brink of a potential default and when we do experience a recession, I think people will be switched on and will be concentrating on Bitcoin a lot more. So in summary, I think Bitcoin will have a lot of upside going into the next 5 to 10 years.
What do you think about, we've just seen a little bit of news about the US inflation, CPI data and stuff like that. This is not the type of thing that I typically focus on because I just don't really care. I'm more interested in the charts. But I know that you look at this and you've got a lot of thoughts about it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so it's actually for Bitcoin, let's just cover what happened. So in the past 12 consecutive core CPI data results, so core CPI looks at inflation, but it excludes food, energy, and housing, which is the volatile things. So every 12 core CPI data, Bitcoin on average every single time has dropped, and on average it's dropped by approximately 1.096%. So today we've confirmed the 13th time where Bitcoin going into CPI, it has dropped one more time. So the issue here is the core CPI came out the same, and the CPI came out higher than expected. And the Federal Reserve, they have a target of 2% inflation. And if this inflation does not come down to 2% and rather goes higher, then it means that the interest rates will be kept at higher levels for longer. And if interest rates are kept at higher levels, then what happens in the market is, number one, the dollar gains value because foreign investors, they swap their own local currencies into the dollar to take advantage of that high interest rates in the dollar. So once the dollar value, the Dixie goes up in price or the index goes up, you see other assets denominated under it lose value. So even the stock market lost value today. Gold, even though it's an inflation hedge, it's lost value. Bitcoin has lost value. And that's why I think in the short term, it's a problem because if investors do not put their money in the market and keep it in the bank instead, then risky assets such as Bitcoin will not pump. So yeah, I think in the short term, it's an issue. But in the macro, once we enter hyperinflationary situations in the bigger countries and the bigger economies, then we will see mass Bitcoin adoption. So if you have a long-term mindset, it shouldn't phase you out too much. But if you are in the game for the short term, I think it could be concerning.
One of the most interesting things for me about the interest rate stuff is we've seen interest rates get super high, which should not be bullish for markets, right? Like if interest rates are super high, it's not easy to borrow money. That's the thinking behind this. And yet we've seen one of the craziest Bitcoin rises ever, especially because of how mature it is now compared to before. When everything that goes up must come down. Everything, when you press the green button, you got to press the red button. When you press the red button, you got to press the green button, right? When this starts to reset and come back down, because it will eventually, do you think that's going to be a bullish thing for this market?
See, I think a lot of regional banks, in the United States especially, their balance sheets hold a lot of housing-related investments. So if interest rates remain higher for longer, these smaller banks have already losses that surpassed the 2008 levels. So at higher interest rates, they're losing so much money that we may see a similar scenario that we experienced with SVB, First Republic Bank. And historically speaking, when we do have banking sector issues, Bitcoin actually pumps in price. So having higher interest rates for longer will cause these regional banks to get in more trouble. And at a point where we have more banking crisis in the market, I think Bitcoin's price will reflect positively to it.
I literally cannot see a long-term downside to being in Bitcoin based off what you've just said. The only thing that I think could be problematic for Bitcoin is if all of this stuff starts to collapse and, the house of cards comes tumbling down. I personally do still think that we are looking at a situation similar to 2020 back here, where we saw a very big collapse purely because absolutely everybody lost their risk appetite in the market, even though, and it's the same thing that we're talking about now, right? Bitcoin may have officially become like an inflation hedge. It being labeled as a commodity, by the way, is quite cool because that almost sounds bullish, and the US government is doing that, so I think that's quite interesting. But when the time actually comes and shit hits the fan, we have been proven that people do not want to hold Bitcoin. This was the ultimate test of Bitcoin. I don't want to act like Bitcoin was not mature enough to face this test at this stage. I think a lot of people would cope and say that it was indeed a little bit too young, but let's bear in mind that Bitcoin was created in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, so that's 11 years that Bitcoin had been around. We're now 4 years further down the line, so obviously, yes, a little bit more mature, but I do think that when the time actually came and Bitcoin was tested, it was absolutely destroyed, down by 62 or 70% or whatever the hell it was in a very short space of time. Tells you absolutely everything you need to know about just how safe people felt Bitcoin was in a disaster situation. This time could be different. FA, you've described to us why it could be different. That is the only concern that I have, though. Everything else you've said, and obviously my own money being where my mouth is, I still think Bitcoin has got the best fundamental setup it ever has had. To be honest, I think it's always had this same fundamental setup. We've actually discussed this just like 2 days ago. We were actually live on Carl the Moon's channel like 2 days ago or something like that. We were talking about very similar ideas. But ladies and gents, that is going to be all for this one. By the way, if you haven't actually seen FA before, this motherfucker is actually 16 years old. So that is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to link him down in the description below. His channel is really interesting. What he's looking at, and he's on Carl's channel as well, what he's looking at is a lot of this data and going quite in-depth on these ideas, way more in-depth than you'll get on my channel. And it's a different approach to the market, right? I'm obviously primarily interested in how do I make money? How do I put a leverage trade in and make my 20, 30, 50, 100%, 200%, whatever, and that's it. It's the only thing I care about. It's the only thing I'm going to talk about. It's the only thing I'm going to look at. FA obviously is interested in that, but he's getting there from a much more in-depth perspective. If you like that kind of thing, then definitely check his YouTube channel out. If you like the fact that you're listening to a super cool young guy that's super, switched on in this space on this channel, then you're going to get way more of that on FA's channel. Bro, do you have any closing remarks for this video?
Dude, I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you to your audience too. I lost my voice today because I was like streaming for 1 hour and then did a video, so apologies for that. Bro, apart from what we talked about, I think that you're right with what happened in 2020. I think if we see a same type of recessionary environment, then everything will go to hell. Because in a recession, everything loses money because nobody has money to invest. So in a case where we do see a huge recessionary phase, then I think Bitcoin will dump, just like gold did and every stock in the world did. But I think the difference will be Bitcoin, gold, and silver. They will probably be able to recover a lot quicker than other investment alternatives. So what I have right now, I'm mostly in Bitcoin because I think the risk of holding dollars versus the risk of holding Bitcoin, if you put it in Bitcoin, in my perspective, it's less risky.
People ask me, like, how do you sleep at night being all in on Bitcoin? And my response is always, how do you sleep at night being all in on the fiat system?
Exactly. And, you know, Henry Ford says this. I mean, he said this when he was alive. Once the American people find out how corrupt the banking system is, there will be a revolution by tomorrow morning. And I think we're at a time where that could be happening any day now. So that's why being in Bitcoin to me is less risky. And if you just have a little bit of cash on the side, then in case of a recession, then you'll have that capital to be buying some.
Good stuff, man. Thank you very much. Ladies and gents, if you have enjoyed this video, you know exactly what to do. One final time, if you've already taken advantage of these promotions, then shout out to those of you that have. You guys have been loving all of this free capital. If you haven't already, the links are still down below. These offers do not last forever. The Bitcoin one specifically, when enough of you have taken it, Bybit's just going to take it off because it loses the money. So take advantage of these offers if you are interested. Of course, make sure that you do smash those likes up, subscribe, tick the bell, do all that beautiful stuff on your way down to the links in the description. With that, ladies and gents, I'm going to see you all in the next one, and I promise, the next video is going to be my Ethereum BTC analysis. You'll see that tomorrow. Thank you very much. See you all in the next one. Cheers.